In this video, we are going to talk about whether or not it's appropriate for you to feed your dogs raw pork ribs. Let's get started. What's up everybody, Scott here from rawfeeding101.com, and if this is your first time here, welcome, and in the comment section below, let me know whether or not you've ever fed pork ribs to your dog or dogs. And of course, if you're new here, subscribe so that you don't miss future raw feeding videos, and click the little bell icon that pops up when you do. So, for those of you guys that do not know, I currently run a Facebook group called Raw Feeding 101. Now, Raw Feeding 101 is a fairly sizable group at this point. We've got about 25,000 people in there. There's a lot of people. And it's geared towards beginner raw feeders. So I see lots and lots of questions about what can I and what can I not safely feed to my dogs. And one of the really common questions that get asked is, can I feed my dog raw pork ribs? Well, let's talk about that. The answer to this question is simply, or not so simply, yes and no, okay? It's going to be appropriate for some dogs, and it's not going to be appropriate for some other dogs. I don't even know what appropriate, whatever that was. But for some dogs, yes, for some dogs, no. And there's gonna be some considerations for you there. One is your dog's size, okay? Like a 50-pound lab, 75, 80-pound German Shepherd, yes, this is totally doable. Now let's go a little bit smaller. Let's go way smaller, actually. You know, a Chihuahua, something like a Shih Tzu, I never know how to say that right. But them, maybe not. Not at least as part of their diet. You know, not part of their raw meaty bones, their bone content and their raw and fresh food diet. That's gonna be no, because it's gonna be simply too tough for most of those dogs. Now, there's always an exception to every rule, but for the most part, it's just gonna be too much. But for those small dogs, you still may be able to use a pork rib as a recreational chew, which is just something that they can chew on to get stimulation, clean their teeth, occupy them while you do something else, but you should never leave your dogs unattended with something that they're chewing on. You need to be there, so be doing something you can do there. But, so for those small dogs, not so much as part of their diet. Now let's go to the other side of the spectrum, okay? The big, massive dogs. You know, the 120, 150, 180 pound Great Danes. Maybe the Great Pyrenees. And now you're probably hearing the four-wheeler going by my house. But for those dogs, maybe not. Because they're just too big, and it does present a choking hazard for some of those dogs. Now there's something else that you need to consider here. One, I do recommend that if it's possible, you feed ribs in 2 rib sections. And what do I mean by that? You know, the actual rib, if you're looking at a rack of ribs and you've got rib, and all the meat that's in between them, try and have at least 2. It drastically reduces choking concerns because it's no longer this, you know, kind of tube-like bone that your dog could swallow if they were a gulper or overexcited, which leads me into the second thing that you should keep in mind. Is your dog a gulper? It sucks, I know. I have a little one right now, a little labradoodle here. He is our tiny one, Montu. I would probably not feed him pork ribs, at least right now, because he's just too much of a gulper right now. We may end up having to feed him ground foods for forever. Maybe we buy a grinder, maybe we continue feeding pre-mates with this one, but for him, I would not feed it right now if he was an adult and had these same eating habits. It's just too much of a risk. So, and that, by the way, gulpers is something that you should be considering for any bone that you are feeding of a dog of any size, breed, or mix. So ultimately, the bottom line answer here is that yes, it's appropriate for some dogs, and no, they're not appropriate for other dogs. What is your dog's size? What are their eating habits? Are they gulpers? Do they chew well? And is it, again, appropriately sized for your dog's size? How much do they weigh? What kind of eater are they? What are their bone content needs? All of that stuff needs to be taken into consideration. So yes and no. Make sure to check out rawfeeding101.com, and if you haven't already, join our free Facebook group, Raw Feeding 101. I'll see you next time.